Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
But Tony Gosling has Bilderberg.org. He just always has such amazing research information, connections into Bilderberg and others to break down what's happened. But I wanted to have him on today to briefly go over the history of Bilderberg and some of his perspectives on that, and then any info he's got on the 2009 meeting that just ended. Tony, good to have you here with us.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you here. Yeah, I was driving in the car and heard you on George Butler's show this weekend, and I interviewed you before, and I thought, man, he really is breaking down the history great and bringing out a lot of things that I didn't even know about. I knew about some of it, but like the submarine delivering Nazis and Prince Bernhard in Canada and all of that, it was just really intriguing, so I wanted to have you on.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'm not sure, Alex, are you and your listeners familiar with the two main characters behind the first Bilderberg meeting?
What is it, Joseph Ratzinger or Rettinger?
Joseph Rettinger.
Yeah, Rettinger, and then Bernhard, and then one other.
Obviously, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these two characters, there's quite a lot has come out of them. I mean, Bernhard died about 3-4 years ago, and after that, I don't know if you've heard this, but there was a fantastic BBC Radio 4 documentary as part of the series Document, which looked really closely at his involvement, Bernhard's involvement, immediately after the Second World War in smuggling Nazi war criminals out of Europe and across to South America. So Bernhard was actually a key person in that, as it came out in this documentary. And it's interesting that the BBC have been able to do that after his death, I guess.
Tony, do me a favor and back off your phone. We always have trouble over to England for some reason, or maybe it's the phone system at Genesis again, but back off that phone for it so it's not distorted. Yes, I was aware of that BBC report, multi-part series. I listened to most of it, and it was just going off Bilderberg's own documents and what's been released by the Royal House. This is not our opinion. And I want you to go through that history for those that may not know it, because you're so good at telling it and have so much research. How does that dovetail with the British and U.S. Army reports about what we already had pieces of, about in the 43, 44, the Nazis knew they were going to lose, so they put their money through the Crumps and others into setting up a European Union through dummy corporations. And then in 54, I see it as kind of the Nazi wealth teaming back up and merging again with the Anglo-American establishment, that coming together, that transatlantic union, so you can't really say Bilderberg is Nazi. It is elitist, but it has that core group of Nazis in it wanting a European Union.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is really well put together by this academic, Mike Peters. Now, Professor Mike Peters, he was up at, up until recently, he's just recently retired in the last year or so, working up at Leeds Metropolitan University, the old Polytechnic up there. But he used to run a magazine called Here and Now in the 1990s and late 80s. And because he actually couldn't get the university authorities to publish this paper that he put together about Bilderberg. So what he did is he spiced it up a bit, made it a little bit more readable, and published it in his magazine. And it's called Bilderberg and the Project for European Unification. And it starts out really as a sort of academic pamphlet, but it's really very readable, and it goes into all of the sort of nuts and bolts of the initial meetings that led to people thinking that Bilderberg was going to be necessary. So we're talking about back in 1943, the Council on Foreign Relations, War and Peace Study Groups over in the States deciding really that there was a need for a Bilderberg-type organization, bringing together real prestigious figures, heads of state, but the whole thing, right from the beginning, was going to be covert. Now, this was working in parallel with things like the Marshall Plan, the Lend-Lease to the British forces during the Second World War, and how that was going to be paid back, and also how Britain and Europe was going to be rebuilt. And this was also tied into the whole European movement, the idea that it was essential to get a political union right across Europe.
Now, I don't get involved in Protestants and Catholics fighting. I don't get into this, religious craziness. And this is a radio show, a news program. And I have found that, there's some crowds out there that obsess on Catholics and Catholic intrigue and Catholic secret societies, and everybody's a secret agent of it. And so I for years thought that was discredited and stupid and silly because some of the proponents of it were so ridiculous. But then, through being attacked, I did actually look at it deeper. And then when I was doing research for Endgame on the founding of Bilderberg, European Union, all of that, the Nazi connections, the Catholic Church connections, the Treaty of Rome, 57, how they say the European Union will be the new Holy Roman Empire. And I went, wow, that's actually true. And then how Tony Blair is converted to Catholicism so he can be a new EU head, and they denied that, and now they're talking about it. And then all these weird P2 lodges interconnecting, and then Joseph Redinger and all of that. I mean, there really is something there at the bottom of it.
I don't see it quite like that, though, Alex. I mean, what I see the Catholic Church, almost the Vatican, kind of besieged by all these different organisations. I mean, the idea of Tony Blair knocking on the door and wanting to be their friend is an attempt, I think, to influence what is seen as actually quite. There are elements certainly within the Vatican that are very resistant, I think, to the sort of mass politicization of Europe under one.
So you're saying the European Union isn't being pushed strongly by the Catholic Church?
No, I don't see it like that. I think there are elements in all of the churches right across Europe which are, I mean, there's battles going on within those institutions. If you want, it's something a little bit like an organisation like the BBC that can come out with a fantastic documentary on one subject. Maybe they did a very good job on the David Kelly story, that hour-long documentary. If people haven't seen it, they really.
You're saying there's different camps. You're saying there's different camps
within the same organisation, and also they're under assault. Organised assault from outside, so that there are outside agencies sending, so people to infiltrate these organisations and influence them.
Exactly. I just wanted your opinion, and we also noticed that it's only kosher to attack the Catholic Church, and very popular, and there's certainly a lot to attack, but by the mainstream media, that's always questionable as well. I have just seen those.
I think there's a good reason for that, actually, and that is that the Protestant Church has traditionally welcomed Freemasons, and lots of the Protestant Church in certainly here in Britain. I mean, I don't know about elsewhere in Scotland as well. It's actually quite normal for Freemasons to be in the church, even though they won't talk about it. Whereas the Catholics have had many edicts. Quite whether they're taking any notice of or not is another thing, but, papal declarations against Freemasonry saying that Freemasons cannot be in the church. So I think that's one of the interesting things about this. When I see that, I think, well, hang on a minute, what the Protestants are doing is they're ignoring the beam in their own eye and pointing the finger at the Catholics. But this is, I think, part of the attempts to kind of get these various quite powerful institutions which are in the way of all these New World Order style changes, fighting each other, just as they've been doing, obviously, in...
Sure, it's divide and conquer. Sure, it's divide and conquer, just like right now they want it to be liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans fighting with each other over left-right, when left-right are all unified at the top to bring in the New World Order. But I didn't mean to have you digress there. I just wanted to go into some of that because... wasn't Redinger like a Jesuit or something?
Well, he was I don't know about him being a Jesuit, but he certainly was a Freemason. And this is one of the interesting things that's come out. I mean, we've got quite a good Polish community here in Bristol, and I was chatting to some Polish people, and they were going, right, yeah, this guy Redinger is big news. Even though he died such a long time ago, in Poland there are people writing books now about him and about how this interesting Polish-born guy who was working for MI6 during the Second World War, looking after the Polish leader in exile, how he was, there would be people picking apart his life as he was growing up in Poland and things like this. But, of course, this stuff is all only in Polish, yeah. So one of the things I'm working on at the moment is trying to get some of this stuff out into the English language.
All right, stay there. Bilderberg.org. We're going to have to hold you longer than 30, 40 minutes because I'm really getting intrigued. Let's get into what we know about Bilderberg, how it was founded, what its goals are, these army reports that are confirmed about the Nazi money going into it, that merger of the Anglo-American establishment with the old European elite, with Germany at the center. Certainly Germany is the heart of the EU. That can't be debated. And so we'll break all that down and then get any latest intel you've got from England, because I know you always get a lot of inside info that's turned out to be pretty accurate at Bilderberg.org. Tony Gosling is our guest. Your call's coming up, and I'll break down this sickening New York Times attack on myself and others. Stay with us.